Today, they showed me a video. It's online. It's generated almost 10 million views so far. It's in London, right? And it shows a man walking over train tracks, climbing onto the platform to harass a woman, to check a woman, to inveigle himself, or whatever words you want to use. But basically, he liked her, so he crossed the live track to make his acquaintance. It happened around about 10 p.m. on Friday. Why don't you take a little listen to the bit that we can play you?
Go away! What is wrong with you?
I'll follow you though.
What is wrong with you?
If you act up, I'll follow you.
What is wrong with you?
Okay, let me say my part.
You've just jumped
Okay, let me say my part then.
What's your part?
I don't know why you're acting like that.
Bro,
though.
go away. I don't want to know you.
No, let me know.
He doesn't go away. As he says there, let me say my part or I'll follow you. And if you watch the whole video, I mean, it's fruity language. I should probably warn you of that. And that's been heavily cleaned up. Because the thing that we talked about a lot, which I haven't mentioned to you yet here, is that the big argument in this office was about the way she told him to go away. Because she wasn't nice. That's a nice bit that we played. But basically, she told him to F off. Excuse me for saying that, but I think it's really important for the context of our conversation. And I wondered about his sensibilities, and the women in the office are saying, what, so do we have to pander to his... And I'm thinking, well, yeah, because you might get knocked out.
I mean, sometimes I just think why people just don't say, just say no. I mean, it's a bit like the old drug word, when people are drugs...
Gaynor, stop. That's nonsense what you just said. And I'm
Well, I don't think so. I'm a female. I have to say no.
I mean, that's got a lot of attention privately and professionally, I've got to say. I was always going to come back to this in some way, shape or form. But I really wanted to ask the team that I work with, which are all women, what was the best way that I could do it. And we came up with the idea that we were going to do a show about consent. And then this story in Bruce Grove happened. And I remember this one came in straight away. Listening to your show right now, Gaynor is so wrong what she said. Oh my goodness, I am so shocked. As a past victim of sexual abuse and physical abuse, sometimes it's impossible to just say no. Let's speak to Zan Moon. Zan's an activist who set up Screen Grab Them, where women can anonymously report harassment. Morning to you, Zan.
Morning.
Thanks very much. So you've been listening. Give us your feedback. What would you like to pick up on? I'll let you lead if you like.
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, just in response to that comment saying that why don't women just say no? We do. We say no thousands and thousands of times. The simple truth is that men don't take no for an answer. Like, that is our reality. That is our daily reality, which is what you can see in this video here. She said no multiple times. Before the video actually started, she tried asking politely. Then he crosses a live track to go and target and harass her. She's saying no repeatedly. She then starts saying, F off and things like that. And in just response to what you said there about how she should be asking more politely, what you're doing there is putting the onus on women to lessen the likelihood that they'll get hurt by changing their behaviour. That is not the focus. The focus and the onus is on men to change. It's on the public to intervene. It's on TfL to do better.
Why can't we focus on all of them?
But you're not. You said she shouldn't have spoken like that.
Well,
she should have spoken more politely.
First thing is you have to recognise that I'm an ally. Otherwise, it wouldn't be on the show. So what I do and what I'm trying to do is examine all ways that we can do it. So I asked Sharon, how do I help? What do we do with the woman? But it came up as a conversation, and I'm glad that you've brought this up.
I know you're an ally.
No, what I'm saying, it came up, so let's discuss it. You know what I mean? I'm not running off. Yeah. I'm just giving you context. It came up about how do you say no? When I talk to the women here, and they say, you got to be really careful how you say no to a guy for fear of being punched. And is that not a thing then?
It is, but it comes to a point, what do you do when you've asked politely? You've asked politely multiple times and then he's crossed a track. crossed the train track to come over. He's like got his hands in his pockets. You don't know what's in the pockets. He's interrogating you. What more do you do when you've asked for people to intervene? No one's intervening. You've asked politely. You've said, please go away and leave me alone. Like, you have to understand that as this instance has happened, it's not isolated. This will have been the tip of the iceberg on multiple microaggressions for women that happen on a daily basis. Like being catcalled from A to B is a daily occurrence. And so when it comes down to it and someone's targeting you like that, it's literally the tip of the iceberg. So you really can't help yourself but just end up getting emotional about it, and that is not a bad thing to show that emotion.
Right.
And it is, again, it's just not on the woman to try and control her wording. It's on the men and everyone else to try and help us so that we're not in that position in the first place.
So, Zan, have you got a few minutes? Because clearly we're not going to have the conversation that I want to have with you in 2 minutes, and you tell me how you come to be a campaigner. And also I'd love to ask you, because I was always coming back to this, I've just used this video, but you heard an older woman who is an agony aunt talking about the fact that younger women in particular, that how I perceived it, should just say no. And I'd love you to explain why that is also, I would imagine, putting the onus on the woman and a challenge. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Can we do that? In that extract, you heard an older woman say women should just say no. And I got to tell you, Zan, that isn't the only older woman who said that to me. Indeed, I was told that I should have let her speak for longer. Your thoughts, please, Zan?
I'm just like, I'm dumbfounded. I'm lost for words. Yeah, it's absolutely shocking. But more to the point, Eddie, women do say no. They do, but men don't listen. It's as simple as that. The amount of times I've said no to boys who then think it's a game or it's up for debate. And you can see that in this video. This young girl says no multiple times. It just gets ignored. But more importantly, when we get into this, like, why shouldn't she just say no? Why does she just not go out alone at night? Why didn't she just report it? So it's a really dangerous rhetoric for this woman to be holding, because it really fuels the belief that women need to be constantly changing their behaviour so men don't assault them.
But what is it? I could only work it out to, as an older woman, there were things that she went through that she doesn't understand why you can't go through in the same way. Or maybe just help me to understand it.
Yeah, and I can understand it was a different generation. Perhaps in those days, it was more of like sweep it under the rug. We're not talking about it. Whereas we're now in a generation of Me Too and talking about sexual harassment, which is amazing. But it's still the case that so many women do not report because of this constant conditioning that you should just shut up and carry on, when actually we're now in a movement where we're encouraged to report. And I encourage any woman listening to report to British Transport Police and to report to TfL about whatever happens to them. It's so important because it encourages other women to speak up. So silencing other women like this is really, really dangerous.
And if I'm asking you to go to an era that is in any way kind of triggering, then please, we won't do it. Why are you such a vociferous campaigner?
Well,
do you have a story is my question.
Yes, I think every woman has a story, Eddie, and that's part of the problem. My story started when I was 15. I was sexually assaulted at a party. I said no multiple times. Everyone around me could see that I was saying no. The room was very busy, but I was sort of followed into every different room that I ran away from him from, and then choked and held against the wall while he assaulted me. That is just one of a plethora of experiences that I've had as a woman. And as I came to realise that that was actually quite wrong, I started speaking about it with friends and realised that everyone has a story to tell. And so I started collating testimonies from women across different schools and universities around the country who had experienced this kind of rape culture whilst they were in education. And I took it to the government and I took it to the head teachers to try and enact change.
How exhausting is it?
It is very, very tiring, but you have to hold on to hope that even if the change isn't, you're not seeing the change happening in government and in policies, you might be able to have some impact encouraging women who are listening to speak up, or encouraging men or fathers to have those conversations.
So let's do
with
one of those, because I'm the second one of those, right? So
Yeah.
and I accept that responsibility and that challenge. Let's deal with the first bit of that, because it felt to me, every time I'm going to do a story like this, I'll put the story in or something. I'll put sexual harassment on TFL, and then I'll put news in, just so that I'm on the angle. And what came up was a story that had nothing to do with TFL, which I wished I'd said to Gaynor at the time, really. And you might have read about this 19-year-old soldier who was the object of her superior officer and said no, and in the end tragically took her life. Are you aware of that story?
Yeah.
And I wish I'd said that to Gaynor, because that lady said no a lot of times, didn't she? So what I was particularly struck by was the number of younger women who said, well, that happens all the time. Have you a message to those people?
Have I a message to the women?
Well, they're saying, how can I explain this to you with all respect and sensitivity? It felt like there was an acceptance of that is just the way it is.
Yeah. And that's so sad, isn't it? Like and that is kind of the problem that I'm dealing with as an activist, when I'm asking people to come forward with stories. A lot of times, the main problem I have is people don't recognize that what is happening is bad because they think it is just normal. Like, I will talk about what happened to me on TFL, and people say, oh my gosh, yeah, and that's just kind of your commute to work, isn't it? And it's part of the problem that violence against women has permeated so much of our everyday lives that women just feel it is a normal everyday occurrence. And so we have to try and have these conversations like this right now to make everyone aware that that is not normal and it is not okay. And we need to start talking about it like that.
But I've also talked to women who find dealing with it triggering, which is why I asked you before I started with you, and actually tuck it away somewhere so that they can get on with their lives.
Yeah, totally. And it is really difficult because what you're dealing with is actually something that's incredibly intimate and really quite painful. But the conversations don't need to be happening, women, the onus isn't on women, is what I'm saying. The conversations can also be really constructive between men, like a father and a son. Like, those conversations are incredibly powerful. And between friendship groups of like boys' WhatsApp groups, and just encouraging each other to have more of a positive rhetoric around women rather than this constant locker room banter, which is adding fuel to the fire.
So ultimately, what is it that you want? And can we get there in small steps? So if we were taking a baby step today, what would it be that you would want us to take away from this conversation?
Goodness, where to begin? I think the most important thing for me is on public intervention. Like C1 said, it's really important. If you witness it happening as a woman, as a man, as a father, as a stranger, please intervene. I know it's scary, but even if it just means standing up and distracting the woman, or even just taking a picture of the man or the perpetrator, please do something. It goes such a long way to help report it, to help fight getting these people like off the streets, but also just to show that it's not okay, and to show the women who are experiencing it that you stand with them and you stand against violence against women.
And in terms of you, how do you chill out? I mean, because it's a tough place to live in, even though what you're doing is amazing. How what's your downtime? How do you chill out? How do you get yourself out of that zone, or do you live in that zone?
Well, I'm a boxer, so I guess that answers your question.
Oh, well, you get on the heavy pads, do you? you get on the. You're not doing that as a form of self-defense or anything. Is that what you've always done, or is it something that you've decided to do?
It is something I decided to do, but I do think that self-defense should be more accessible for women, just as a last resort. Obviously, it shouldn't be on women to kind of protect themselves, but it is important.
Give a message to men listening then, because when we did a program called Safe in London, and I'm pretty sure you're more aware of these numbers than I am, but the numbers of reported assaults, whether it be through dating apps, whether it be harassment on public transport. It's just scary. The convictions are ridiculously low. The backlog in the court. You know these stories better than I, but it's what I do. And what I took away was that I had a male privilege in that I didn't have to have the keys between my hand or work out where the lampposts and the lights were when I was moving about. But the most important thing as a pup that I took away was that I had to try and teach my boys how to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Yep. My main message to men is if you witness something happening, I want you to imagine that was your mum or your girlfriend or your sister. Would you feel comfortable watching that experience happening to someone that you love, the women in your life? And if you're not, and I hope that you wouldn't feel comfortable with that, speak up, interrupt it and intervene. Do what you can to try and dismantle that situation and protect the woman.
Can we keep this going? Can we keep talking about? No, I don't mean now. I mean, can we keep going as in, not waiting for some disaster, but maybe updating, keeping, challenging, reminding. Can we do that? You up for it?
Yeah, I'm up for it.
Let's do that. I enjoyed talking to you. I'm sorry that it's been under such a challenging circumstance, but you've given us a great deal of food for thought. Zan, I appreciate you on the show. Look after yourself. Activists who set up something called Screen Grab Them, where people can anonymously report harassment. A number of you